Every hero who took a stand and died in a far-off land, help our children to understand on Remembrance Day. For every hero who said goodbye and left behind a blushing bride, his mother's heart still fills with pride on Remembrance Day. Hot, 2, 3, 4, Johnny goes marching off to war. Remember what they were fighting for on Remembrance Day. For every hero who in battle fell in a rain field, laden down with shells, it's their story we must tell on Remembrance Day. Hot, 2, 3, 4, Johnny goes marching off to war. Remember what they were fighting for on Remembrance Day. Every hero who volunteered to defend us both far and near, they're the reason we're standing here on Remembrance Day. Hot, 2, 3, 4, Johnny goes marching off to war. Remember what they were fighting for on Remembrance Day. Hot, 2, 3, 4, Johnny goes marching off to war. Remember what they were fighting for on Remembrance Day. On Remembrance Day. On Remembrance Day. For every hero who took a stand and died in a far-off land, we must help our children to understand on Remembrance Day. Tonight, Tuesday Live remembers. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Tuesday Live Remembers show. And thanks so much for joining us tonight. That opening song I just played was by Canadian singer-songwriter Mike Plume. If you've never heard of him, give him a listen. He does some great songs, including that song called On Remembrance Day. I think somebody requested that a year or two ago. This is our third Remembrance show we've done on Tuesday Live. And tonight we're remembering and looking back at those who served us, and particularly those who served us in time of conflict. And how far can you go back to look at service? So I've got a couple some pictures here I thought I might share with you. I found this. Carol and I were down in Eastern Ontario by Upper Canada Village, and there's a thing there. It's very difficult to read because it's sort of washed out, but basically it's honoring the United Empire Loyalists who and the regiments, the King's Loyal Regiments that served during the American Revolution. And obviously they lost everything they had in that conflict. They were on the losing side, and ended up 4,000 of them came to Canada, and certainly a lot of what Canada was back then was just the Upper Canada around Eastern Ontario. So a lot of them settled there and certainly helped in the development of the country. But that's going back folks who served, I guess, early part of Canada. And then not too far from that memorial is actually a little bigger memorial, and this is from the War of 1812, the Battle of Chrysler's Farm, and which was a battle fought in 1813, actually. And the War of 1812, I've been reading a bit about that lately, and it was there were some pretty horrific battles in the War of 1812. I'm glad we don't have that conflict with our good friends to the south of the border these days. And David Hill, who watches the show regularly and as a local historian in Eastern Ontario, often comes to the after party. He reminded me of the sacrifices that many small communities made, with the example of one of the lost villages that was flooded during the Seaway project back in the early 50s. In Meal Rush, 100 of the 700 people who lived in that community served in the Second World War. Just imagine that, 1 in 7 people participated, and obviously they, not all of them made it back alive, and they've got some great news stories about it. The pilot helped to sink a U-boat in the Bay of Biscay. They were all through this service. And actually, this is the cenotaph from Meal Rush. When the village was flooded, they moved it, and it's now at the Lost Villages Historical Society, and folks still gather there every year. This is a picture David sent from the most recent memorial service this past weekend. And he also sent me this image of a Nathan Galzo, who's a Vancouver artist but has family connections and grew up in Eastern Ontario in the Lost Villages. His family lived there, and he created this image of the SDNG Highlanders landing on the beach in Normandy in June 6th, 1944. I'm of Mennonite heritage on my mom's side of the family, and Mennonites generally considered pacifists, but many of the folks on that side of the family participated in conflict just a result of the circumstances they were in, I guess. My grandfather, pictured here, he fought with the White Russians during the Russian Revolution, which again was on the losing side, and he was captured, but fortunately he ran into one of his fellow neighbors who was on the other side of the conflict and helped him escape. And fortunately, he got to Canada, and here we are now. His brother Cornelius, or Uncle Corny as we used to know him, served in the Canadian military during World War I, as did one of his other brothers, Vic. So he's served there as well. My uncle Stuart Moore, who is married my aunt, he was from the U.S. and he was a chaplain with the U.S. Army during the Second World War. And then there was also oh my gosh, I've lost his name here. Petco. If Chris is out there, she'll let me know. I've just having a momentary brain cramp here, but he just tragically passed in a flying accident during Bert Petco. That's right. I knew it was on the tip of my tongue. He tragically passed away during in a flying accident during a training exercise over BC, and he was a student at UBC at the time. This was post-war, of course. But we still have a member of the service in our family. My cousin, actually my dad's cousin, Angus Hamilton, who just turned 100 this year and still active, and he's written a lot, and he's written a book. I'll put a link up on Facebook with a link to his book about his experiences as a radar mechanic during the Second World War. He had a very interesting service. He never really saw a lot of what he said was what he considered dangerous action because he was a radar mechanic, and basically what the radar mechanics did is they went and brought radar to various places that were getting bombed, and when they showed up, they sort of were able to identify the Nazi aircraft coming in and send out fighter pilots to intercept them, so things would quieten it down when they showed up. But he spent time in Europe and Africa and Asia, and quite interesting stories, and I'm glad that he shared with us. Thanks again for that, Chris. And anyways, tonight we have more recollections tonight. And thanks to everybody who's here tonight. I saw a bunch of folks checking in earlier. Kathy and Chris is here, of course, and Stan McRae, and Danny from up on the Bruce, and Ron from up in Kapuskasing. Good to see everyone here tonight. I know there's other folks out there as well. And we've been accumulating, since this is our third kind of remembrance show that we've done. We've sort of been accumulating them, and I think they're certainly worthy of showing again each year. And I hope that no one out there has a problem with that, me reusing these, because it's kind of nice to look back and think of these folks who did service, because, I guess that's the whole point, right, of Remembrance Day, is to remember. Stan McRae has some images for us, some of them inspired by Remembrance Day, and we also have Rob Dylan, Neil Old and Lazy Horse, and Robbie O'Spoon with music inspired by war and remembrance. And to get things started here with some music, here's cousin Willie Witherspoon. Well, hey, y'all, Willie here. Good to see you again on this Tuesday Live Remembers. You know, we're remembering the folks who paid service to their country. And I know down in the States, we don't call it Remembrance Day, we call it Veterans Day, November 11th. And remember the veterans who served. And I know Uncle Lee, who watches the show from down in Lancaster, New York. I know he's a veteran, so thank you for your service, Lee. And thank you for all the other folks out there who served, you know, when they were called. Certainly appreciate what they've done to, you know, preserve our freedom. And got a good request that Rob passed along to me from Ron up in Kapuskasing. It's a great song. It's actually about the Civil War. And, you know, in the States also think about folks who died in wars on Memorial Day up in May there. And that's, and certainly the Civil War lost a lot of folks killed in the Civil War, and brothers fighting against brothers and sisters against sisters. It was a terrible thing, the Civil War. And let's hope nothing like that ever happens again. You know, we can learn by looking back on our history, I guess, and seeing how things worked out. And, you know, war is never the answer for nothing, is it? It's called The Last Letter Home. I have heard the cannons thundering all night, and I cannot help but wondering why the rebels' cause is right. And the morphine seems to do no good at all. I would run away if I would not fall. And I dreamed of a rose in a Spanish garden, and I kissed you and I placed it in your hair. If I'm ever on my feet again, I will run all the way just to meet you there. Well, I joined the Southern Cavalry for fun. I have rode 1,000 horses, always had a way with a gun. Now I'm among the horseless riders lying still, swallowed up by the cause on a widow's hill. And I dreamed about a rose in a Spanish garden, and I kissed you as I placed it in your hair. And if I'm ever on my feet again, I will. And I will run all the way just to meet you there. Through the day I watch those Southern boys go down, and they lay like Georgia peaches, bruised and broken on the ground. Through the night I wonder, was it worth the pain? And I cried, not revenge, I called your name. And I dreamed of a rose in a Spanish garden, and I kissed you and placed it in your hair. And if I'm ever on my feet again, I will run all the way just to meet you there. Yes, I will run all the way just to meet you there. In anticipation of Remembrance Day, Tim Farrell flies his father's RCAF flag. Frank Farrell served in the armed forces for 28 years and for part of the war served on coastal patrol in the St. Lawrence River, searching for U-boats. Tim's dad is in the group picture, bottom right. The other handsome flyer is Tim's uncle, Steve Hawrish, who was a tail gunner in a Lancaster bomber. His other uncles who were in World War II are not pictured, and they were Jerry Conlon, who served on a Corvette in the Royal Canadian Navy, Stephen Farrell in the Canadian Army, and Jim Farrell, who was in the U.S. Army. Regimental Sergeant Major Charles J.S. Fenton. They shall not grow old, that we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them. We will remember them. Well, thank you, Willie, for that song, and thank you, Ron, for that request. It's a great song, Willie. Really enjoyed doing it. And it was kind of nice to think back to not nice to think back to the Civil War. It's a terrible time for our American brothers and sisters, but certainly think back and remember the folks that paid the ultimate sacrifice there. And I know I missed a couple folks when I was checking in with folks. I see Corey up in Carlisle, a couple of my OAC classmates, and Mary and John out in Carmen, Manitoba. Thanks for joining us tonight. Really appreciate you having you here for our Remembrance show. And thank you, Chris, my active editor. Appreciate pointing out my errors when I make them there. I meant World War II, not World War I guess. Anyways, we got some pictures from Stan McRae, of course, from Eastern Ontario. Stan certainly gets out to a lot of the Remembrance Day services in Eastern Ontario and shares with some photos with us. We saw some earlier on in the pre-show. I had some from Stan shared with us last year, and he's got some new ones this year, along with some wildlife too. So let's turn it over to Stan. Thanks so much for those pictures, Stan. Always amazing. Beautiful. Moving at times. Appreciate it. And those runners that we saw there, those were, Stan said, they were running from cenotaph to cenotaph and dropping off memory stones, which I thought was a cool thing. I think they do some fundraising too with that as well. So thanks for sharing that with us as well, Stan. This song you might remember from, I remember one used to always hear children's choirs singing it at Remembrance Day. If you've never heard it, you should give it a listen sometime, because it's a very moving song sung of the child's choir and child's voices. And it's the famous poem In Flanders Field, written by Colonel John McRae from Guelph. In Flanders fields, the poppies blow between the crosses, row on row, that mark our place. And in the sky, the lark still bravely singing fly, scarce heard amid the guns below. We are the dead, short days ago. We lived, felt dawn, saw sunset glow, loved and were loved, and now we lie in Flanders fields, in Flanders fields, and now we lie in Flanders fields. Take up our quarrel with the foe, to you from failing hands we throw. The torch be yours to hold it high. If ye break faith with us who die, we shall not sleep though poppies grow in Flanders fields, in Flanders fields. We shall not sleep though poppies grow in Flanders fields, in Flanders fields. Afghanistan vets were those runners were running for STAN, a support organization for Afghanistan vets and frontline workers. Very neat. Thanks for sharing that, Stan. And thanks for the information about Flanders Fields, Chris, and kind comments, everyone. And hi, Steve and Kathy up in St. Jacobs. Good to see you here tonight. I'm going to turn it over to our good friend Rob Dylan, who I'm sure will have one of his brother's songs regarding war to share with us. Well, hey everybody, it's Rob Dylan here on this Tuesday Live Remembrance special show, thinking about war and the people who fought in war and all the sufferings of war. And my brother Bob wrote this song. It's called Masters of War in 1962-63, and it was just a raw shout out against what Eisenhower called the military-industrial complex, the people who made profit from war, and the shareholders and the stockholders that made profit from continuous war going on. So that's a terrible thing, and I can see why Bob was so angry about it, but I'm going to give it a run here. Come, you masters of war, you that build the big guns, you that build the death planes, you that build all the bombs, you that hide behind walls, you that hide behind death. I just want you to know that I can see through your mask. nothing but built to destroy. You play with my world like it's your little toy. Put a gun in my hand, then you hide from my eyes. Then you turn and run further when the fast bullets fly. Like Judas of old, you lie and deceive. World war can be won, you want to believe. But I see through your eyes, and I see through your brain, like I see through the water that runs down my drain. That you fasten all the triggers for the others to fire. Then you sit back and watch while the death count gets higher. You hide in your mansions while the young people's blood flows out of their bodies, gets buried in the mud. You throw in the worst fear that can never be hurled. Fear to bring children into the world. For threatening my baby, unborn and named. You ain't worth the blood that runs through your veins. How much do I know to talk out of turn? Might say that I'm young, you might say I'm unlearned, but there's one thing I know, though I'm younger than you, even Jesus would never forgive what you do. Let me ask you one question. Is your money that good? Will it buy you forgiveness? Do you think that it could? I think you will find when your death takes its toll, all the money you made won't ever buy back your soul. I hope that you die and your death will come soon. We'll follow your casket through the pale afternoon, and I'll watch while you're lowered into your deathbed. Then I'll stand o'er your grave till I'm sure that you're dead. Bob Charters joined the Air Force when he turned 18 and flew with the RAF. He was a navigator and bomb aimer on Halifaxes and Lancasters. Shot down behind enemy lines in France while dropping supplies to the resistance, he escaped via the underground, walking over the Pyrenees into Spain, where he was traded back to England for fuel. There was only one other survivor from his crew, and he was captured. This is a photo of him visiting with his father while on leave in England. William Roy Han enlisted in the Royal Canadian Navy and served in the port of Halifax until being discharged in 1945. boy, these young men who went and served. I think a lot of them were seeking adventure. I know certainly Angus Hamilton, my cousin, my 100-year-old cousin out in Fredericton, who he was actually in Elmira, not too far away from here, working at a bank when the war broke out. And he enlisted just sort of to get out and see the world, and certainly did. But I think a lot of young men and women who were involved in the war effort got a lot more adventure than they probably bargained for. But anyways, thanks for that song, Masters of War, and thanks for the background information, Chris. Appreciate that. It certainly is a fierce protest song. But here's a song by a Canadian band called The Trues, called Highway of Heroes, sort of recognizing the more recent people who gave the ultimate sacrifice for Canada in conflicts in Afghanistan. Certainly it's nice not to see those hearses heading from Trenton up to Toronto. That was sad, but also nice to see when folks came out and the overpasses with flags and everything and paid them respects for them. It's called the Highway of Heroes by the Trues. The day I shipped out, they numbered a dozen. Upon my return were 100 or so, from the coast and from the prairies. I bet they keep coming. Add one more name from Ontario and carry me home down the highway of heroes. People above with their flags flying low, carry me softly down the highway of heroes. True patriot love there was never more. Served with distinction, no visions of glory. I served without question, personal gain. Seek no justification, it's not part of my story, and it offers no comfort to the ones who remain. Just carry me home down the highway of heroes. People above with their flags flying low, carry me softly down the highway of heroes. True patriot love there was never more. Took up my vocation, I was called by my nation. Without hesitation, my answer I gave. Now I am not wondering of things that I might have been. Not no consolation to the forgotten brave. So carry me home down the highway of heroes. People above with their flags flying low, carry me softly down the highway of heroes. True patriot love there was never more. Carry me home down the highway of heroes. People I love with their heads hung low, carry me softly down the highway of heroes. True patriot love there was never more. 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 Excuse me. Thanks. Good to see you, Tom. Thanks for checking in. And it's great having those pictures, seeing your dad. That's quite a story, Tom's dad, Bob. getting shot down over Europe and finding his way out and captured and exchanged and back. Quite an adventure that must have been. Hello from Fenland Falls, Miss Mary. Good to see you. We're going to send it out to the Beatles Tribute Room or no, we're sending it to the Beatles Tribute Room. We're sending it all the way to Dublin, Ontario, to our Irish friend Robbie O'Spoon, who's got a tune for us tonight. Robbie.
Well, hello everybody out there in internet lands. Robbie O'Spoon here, Dublin, Ontario, just having a grand old time, swelling the pigs, eating me potatoes, and, well, drinking a few Guinness. And, of course, I'll be raising a pint of Guinness to all the folks that served over the years and all those that have gone on before, who died for our freedom, so to speak. And, a lot of Irish certainly served all over the world and even in their own country, fighting some wars, let me tell you. It's a terrible thing. But the song I'd like to do, it's called "And the Band Played Waltzin' Matilda." It's actually about the Australians in Suvla Bay in the First World War. But, a lot of Irish died there too. The Irish were serving with them alongside them too. The Allied, about 20,000 total Allied troops died in that terrible battle there against the Turks. But anyways, I'm going to give it a go here. Very sad song, so you may want to get out a hanky, When I was a young man, I carried me pack, and I lived the free life on the rover. From the Murray's green basin to the dusty outback, I waltzed my Matilda all over. And then in 1915, me country said, "Son, there's time to stop rambling, there's work to be done." So they gave me a tin hat and they gave me a gun. They marched me away to the war. And the band played Waltzin' Matilda as the ship pulled away from the quay. And amid all the cheers, the flag waving and tears, we sailed away for Gallipoli. Well, I remember that terrible day, how our blood stained the sand and the water, and how in that hell that they called Suvla Bay, we were butchered like lambs at the slaughter. Johnny Turk, he was ready, he'd primed himself well. He rained us with bullets and he showered us with shell. And in 5 minutes flat, he'd blown us all to hell. Nearly blew us right back to Australia. But the band played Waltzin' Matilda when we stopped to bury our dead. Well, we buried ours, and the Turks buried theirs, and it started all over again. And those that were left, well, we tried to survive in that mad world of blood, death, and fire. And for 20 weary weeks I kept myself alive. Well, around me the corpses piled higher. Then a big Turkish shell knocked me arse overhead. And when I awoke in me hospital bed, saw what it had done, well, I wished I was dead. Never knew there was worse things than dying. For no more I'll go waltzing Matilda all around the green bush far and free. To hump, tent and pegs, a man needs both legs. No more waltzing Matilda for me. Neglected the cripple, the wounded, the maimed, and they shipped us back home to Australia. The legless, the armless, the blind, the insane, those proud wounded heroes of Suvla. And when the ship pulled into Circular Quay, I looked at the place where me legs used to be, and thank Christ there was no one waiting for me to grieve and to mourn and to pity. And the band played Waltz and Matilda as they carried us down the gangway. But nobody cheered, they just stood and stared, and they turned all their faces away. So now every April I sit on me porch and I watch the parade pass before me. See my old comrades, how proudly they march, renewing their dreams of past glory. I see the old man, all tired, stiff and sore, the weary old heroes of a forgotten war. And the young people ask, what are they marching for? And I ask myself the same question. And the band plays Waltz and Matilda, and the old man still answer the call. But year after year, the numbers get fewer. Someday no one will march there at all. Waltzin' Matilda, waltzin' Matilda, who come a waltzin' Matilda with me, and their ghosts may be heard as they march by the billabong. Who'll come a waltzin' Matilda with me?
My father, David Witherspoon, didn't talk much about his war experience until later in life. He was fortunate to contract scarlet fever, which delayed his training such that he missed most of the heavy bombing of Germany, where 46% of crews died in action. Training at that stage of the war was very dangerous as well. Of the 10 crews in his bomber conversion training squadron, only 2 survived. Black circles on the ground marked the loss of an aircraft and crew. Mid-air collisions were common as well. Dad recalled his crew descending out of a cloud bank when another bomber darted underneath them. From his navigator bomb aimer position in the belly of the aircraft, he could see the surprised expressions on the faces of the other crew. Dad was proud of the missions his crew flew to provide food relief to Nazi-occupied Holland near the end of the war. My wife Carol's Uncle James Robert Henderson enlisted with the Perth Regiment at the start of World War II. Serving as an intelligence officer, his regiment was involved in the Allied invasion of Italy in 1944. He and another officer were in an advanced position when they came under heavy shelling. His family initially received a telegram indicating that he had been wounded, but later learned he had been killed instantly. He is buried in the Montecchio War Cemetery near Florence, Italy. Well, those 2 memories are certainly close to me. My dad's service in the Air Force. I see Corey's dad's entry was delayed by scarlet fever as well, because I know my dad think when he was enlisted in Toronto on his way home from high school, a few of his buddies decided they'd enlist and join the Air Force. And they were, I think, initially stationed like at the old exhibition grounds there in the like where the Royal Winter Fair is being held right now, in their large barracks. And I think scarlet fever broke out, and a few of them were left behind for a bit, like Corey's dad, my dad. And it's interesting. Tom Charters, who we mentioned Tom's dad earlier in the show too. They're both Navigator bomb aimers on Lancasters, heavy bombers, that was the real dangerous part of the war, flying those big heavy planes. And I don't know if you noticed that picture of my dad and his crew in front of their plane. The fuselage of the aircraft was quite riddled with bullet holes. So boy, it must have been tough flying those old things. But I think they're new then, I guess. But anyways, thanks Robbie too for that nice version of and the band played Waltzing Matilda. And thanks Chris for that background. Very interesting song, how it developed and how it's evolved over time. Certainly a very moving song as well. I'm glad you could hear all the words, Ron. We're going to turn it over to the Beatles tribute room, and we've got Neil Old and Lazy Horse queued up to do a song for us. So Neil.
Well, hey everybody, it's Neil Old here tonight. Good to see you on this Tuesday night. You notice from the sound we've got the full electric effects going here in the Beatles tribute room, and I've got Lazy Horse here ready to kick off. We're gonna do a little rock and roll. I got new black here, my trusty electric guitar with me, and we're gonna do a Neil song called "Flags of Freedom," which is about sending your kids off to war. It's a terrible thing to send your kids off to war, and lots of folks have done it generations after generations after generations, and I guess we got to stop that at some point in time, shouldn't we? Anyways, kick it off, Lazy Horse. Today's the day your younger son is going off to war, fighting the age-old battle, sometimes won before. Flags are lying on Main Street or blowing in the wind. These must be the flags of freedom flying. Church bells are ringing as the families stand and wave. Some of them are crying 'cause the soldiers look so brave. Looking straight ahead like they know just where they're going. Past the flags of freedom flying. Sister has her headphones on. She hears the music blasting. She sees her brother marching by. Their bond is everlasting. Listen to Bob Dylan singing in 1963. These must be the flags of freedom flying. She sees the president speaking on a flat screen TV. The window of an old appliance store. She turns to see her brother again, but he's already walking past. The flags of freedom flying. Have you seen the flags of freedom? What color are they now? Do you think that you believe in yours more than they do in theirs somehow? When you see the flags of freedom flying. your son is going off to war, fighting in the age-old battle you sometimes won before. Flags lying on Main Street are blowing in the wind. These must be the flags of freedom flying. These must be the flags of freedom flying.
You're absolutely right, Ron. That was some heavy. That Neil Old and Lazy Horse tune. I figure we're going to break out the heavy rock some point in time, and that was an interesting song, The Flags of Freedom. Thanks. Brings us to the end of Tuesday Live Remembers this year. Thank you all for being here, and thanks to all the viewers who shared images and memories we will never forget. Yeah, cowbell would be good on that song. I never thought of that. Thanks to Stan McRae for sharing his images. Rob Dylan, Neil Old, and Lazy Horse, Robbie O'Spoon, and Cousin Willie for sharing their music as well. And appreciate everyone who supports the show, either financially or just by being here or liking, commenting, sharing. Appreciate all of that, and thank you so much. Thanks to my executive producer, Carol, who helps keep things, the good ship Tuesday Live upright and moving forward. And, of course, the talented Tuesday Live animation department produces all our cool graphics. We can certainly continue the conversation. I know hopefully David Hill and Jim and Lynn, a few other folks will be. Maybe Chris will be there. My mom usually shows up. The conversation and remembrance at our virtual after party on Zoom. We always have interesting conversations, and I'm sure this one will be stimulated by some of the history we saw today. We love talking history on the Tuesday Live After Party, but we also talk about things in the future too. If you don't get that link, you can get it by signing up in the email at Tuesday Live. You know, one thing that provided comfort in war was hope. The hope of better days ahead, that all this sacrifice had meaning. Hope that this would be the war to end all wars. You know, we still fight, but until every person finally agrees that enough is enough and we need to learn to love one another, live peacefully, and care for one another. We should divert the resources that fuel the endless wars towards improving our planet and the lives of all who live here. But until then, like those who listened to this song during the darkest days of the Second World War, we have hope. There'll be bluebirds over the white cliffs of Dover tomorrow. Just you wait and see. There'll be love and laughter and peace ever after tomorrow, when the world is free. The shepherd will tend his sheep, the valley will bloom again, and Jimmy will go to sleep in his bed once again. There'll be bluebirds over the his sheep. The valley will bloom again, and little Jimmy will go to sleep in his own little room again. There'll be bluebirds over the white cliffs of Dover tomorrow. Just you wait and see. See you next week.